And today, we're doing a deep dive into the hidden psychology behind that. Like, why the most influential figures out there, whether it's titans of business or political strategists or even massive pop stars, why they deliberately and suddenly withdraw from the spotlight.
It's a strategy that completely shatters how most of us operate today. I mean, we live in this hyper-connected era where we're basically fed the lie that visibility equals value.
Oh, 100%. You have to post, you have to tweet.
You have to chime in on every single email chain.
Right.
But when you look at the mechanics of true power dynamics, the people actually pulling the strings aren't fighting for your attention. They're controlling the supply of their own presence.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it really goes against every survival instinct we have in a corporate or honestly even a social environment.
It feels very unnatural to do.
It does. Think about a crowded room, like
Yeah.
a networking event or even just your Twitter feed. Everyone in this room is basically frantically waving their arms, jumping up and down, just shouting at the top of their lungs to get noticed.
Yeah, the instinct is always to shout louder than the guy next to you.
Right. But what if the ultimate power move, like the absolute most devastatingly effective thing you could do in that room, is to just stop, turn around, and walk out the door?
Leaving the room changes the entire physics of that space.
How so?
Well, to the untrained eye, someone stepping back looks like they're giving up, right? It looks like a retreat or losing relevance. But you're really tapping into this foundational vulnerability in human perception.
Which is what?
When you leave the room, you basically force the people left behind to use their imagination. And human imagination will always build a far more intimidating, impressive version of you than your actual physical presence ever could.
Wow. That makes so much sense.
Uh.
And before we get into the nuts and bolts of how they actually execute this,
Mm-hmm.
I want you, the listener, to do a quick audit of your own daily habits.
Yeah, take a hard look at how you operate.
Exactly. Are you the person who replies to every Slack message within like 30 seconds? Are you constantly explaining your thought process to your coworkers, making sure everyone knows exactly what you're doing at all times?
Because if you're doing that, you're actively eroding your own authority.
Really? Even if you're just trying to be helpful?
Yes, constantly being available seems helpful, but it's fundamentally damaging. To understand why stepping back works, we have to look at the psychological damage of being everywhere all the time.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we don't live in 1800s France. We live in an always-on economy. So if you aren't constantly visible, if you aren't, speaking up in the weekly Zoom catch-up, don't you risk just being completely forgotten? It feels like if you step out of the room today, the door locks behind you and they just hire someone else.
That anxiety is exactly what keeps everyone frantically waving their arms. But it leads you straight into what we call the predictability trap.
The predictability trap.
Think of your presence like a currency. It's basic economics.
Like supply and demand.
Exactly. If a central bank just prints $1 trillion new dollar bills, what happens?
The value of the dollar plummets. Hyperinflation.
Right. The exact same mechanism applies to human behavior. If you are constantly talking, constantly offering opinions, and constantly available, you are hyperinflating your own presence.
Oh, wow. So you're diluting yourself.
You really are.
Yeah.
The supply is so incredibly high that the value of your individual words just drops to zero.
That's a great way to look at it. Predictability is basically the ultimate buzzkill.
It is.
Because if people know exactly how you'll react to a piece of news or exactly what you're going to say in a meeting before you even open your mouth, they literally stop listening to you.
Their brains actually conserve energy by tuning you out.
Because you're a known quantity. You just become a commodity.
What's fascinating here is how deliberate you have to be to reverse that inflation. Let's look back at Napoleon.
Right. He didn't just hide in the closet.
No, not at all. He managed his appearances with ruthless precision. He understood this core principle, the law of absence and presence.
Meaning scarcity increases perceived value.
Precisely. By staying in his quarters and making the court wait, he created this psychological pressure cooker.
People were probably freaking out.
Oh, the rumor mill went into overdrive, like what is he planning, who is he meeting with? So when he finally did emerge, it wasn't just some guy walking into a room.
It was an event.
It was a seismic event. People hung on his every glance.
You see this exact same playbook with modern icons, too. Like, look at massive musicians or tech CEOs.
Oh, absolutely. The album drop strategy?
Yes. What happens right before a highly anticipated album drop or a major company pivot? They completely scrub their social media.
They delete
They
everything.
delete their profile pictures. They go totally dark. They intentionally create this massive void.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Human psychology hates a void even more.
It really does. We can't tolerate empty space, so our brains immediately rush in to fill it.
So by removing themselves from the daily noise, these figures force the public to obsess over them.
Way more intensely than if they were posting, 15 behind-the-scenes videos every day.
It manufactures tension. But here's the reality for most of us.
Yeah.
Physical absence is easy enough if you're a billionaire who controls your own schedule.
Sure, you can just disappear.
Right, but what about when you're trapped in a mandatory Monday morning status meeting? You can't just vanish to a private island to build mystique.
You'd probably just get fired.
Yeah, you have to be sitting right there at the conference table. So how do you maintain that scarcity when you're physically trapped in the room?
That requires shifting your strategy. You move from physical absence to verbal absence.
Greening.
You have to manufacture scarcity using silence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because silence isn't just empty space.
No, not at all.
It's not just the lack of noise. Think of silence as a psychological vacuum.
That's a great way to frame it.
When you deliberately create that vacuum in the middle of a conversation, it makes other people viscerally uncomfortable. Like, their immediate instinct is to rush in and fill that empty air with words.
The physical sensation of silence is actually very difficult for most people to endure.
Really? Like physically?
Yeah, their heart rate ticks up, they start to sweat a little, and in their panic to fill that awkwardness, they almost always reveal way too much information.
They start rambling.
Exactly. They negotiate against themselves, they confess insecurities. So when you deliberately talk less, you actively increase your psychological weight.
I'm laughing because we've all seen this happen in real time.
Oh, every day.
Think about the visceral panic of watching the little typing bubble appear and disappear on Slack for 10 minutes.
It's agonizing.
The silence from the other end drives you crazy. Or think about that one guy on the Zoom call who just cannot stand a 3-second lull.
Oh, there's always one.
Always. He starts rambling, he talks himself into a corner, he volunteers for a project he doesn't even want to do, all because he couldn't just sit in the quiet.
He's desperate for validation, which makes him incredibly lightweight.
Lightweight, I like that.
Because overexposure isn't just about being seen too much, it's about being heard too much. If you're over-explaining your rationale or offering unsolicited advice just to prove you're smart, you destroy your own gravity.
So what's the rule here?
The core principle at play here is simple. Control the rhythm, or the rhythm controls you.
And our modern world has this really frantic, reactive, breathless rhythm.
Everyone is just bouncing off each other's panic.
Exactly right. So when you master the timing of your words, like when someone asks you a pointed question and you choose to pause, make eye contact, and let a 3-second silence hang in the air before you answer, you are violently breaking their frantic rhythm.
You're imposing your own pace on the interaction.
And that gives you immense emotional leverage.
It does.
I mean, listener, picture the person in your own office or friend group who pulls this off. They rarely speak. They just lean back and observe.
They just take it all in.
Yeah, but when they finally lean forward and open their mouth, the entire room goes dead silent.
Everyone physically leans in to catch what they're saying.
That is psychological weight in action. They haven't demanded attention like the guy waving his arms. They've commanded it through the discipline of their previous silence.
Compare that to the person who talks in every single meeting just to hear their own voice.
You just tune them out.
The moment they start speaking, you can literally see everyone else in the room subtly reach for their phones.
It's so true.
The contrast is staggering. Words are cheap. Silence builds an invisible, undeniable authority.
It's incredibly powerful, but it brings up a massive caveat. Using silence as a weapon is fairly straightforward when you're the one holding the cards.
Sure, if you're the boss.
Right. If you're the client or the boss, you can dictate the rhythm. But the dynamic completely changes when you are navigating a corporate hierarchy.
It gets much trickier.
You can't just silently stare at your department head when they ask for a project update. That's a quick way to get fired.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you've hit on the most dangerous part of this strategy.
Which is?
This isn't some rigid, one-size-fits-all formula. If you apply the law of absence blindly when dealing with people who have authority over you, you're walking into a minefield.
Because of egos.
Exactly. You are dealing with egos.
And let's be honest, executive egos are notoriously fragile.
Highly fragile and highly reactive. People in positions of power are frequently insecure about maintaining that power. So if your presence is too loud, it's a threat. But conversely, if your silences are perceived as defiant or aloof or insubordinate, that also triggers a massive threat response.
So it's a tightrope. You have to calibrate your absence.
Exactly.
Because if you're the one shining too brightly or acting too mysterious, you're basically casting a shadow on the person who signs your paychecks.
They'll start to view you as a rival rather than an asset.
This raises an important question then. How do you step back without looking like a slacker or a threat?
The answer is that you have to strategically manage your boss's ego.
Okay.
Sometimes stepping back and disappearing isn't about creating an aura of mystery for yourself. It's about leaving the stage completely clear so your superior can step into the spotlight and feel grand.
Oh, wow. So you're orchestrating the space for them to win.
Yes.
Practically speaking, what does that look like? Like, let's say my boss presents a totally mediocre idea in a meeting. The amateur move is to immediately point out the flaws to show how smart I am, just to get my voice in the room.
The amateur reacts to the room. They feel the anxiety to prove their worth, so they speak up and unintentionally humiliate the boss.
Right, which never goes well.
Never. The power player anticipates the room. They understand that their overt brilliance in that specific moment is actually a liability.
So what do they do instead?
The practical mechanism is to use a micro-absence. You defer.
Micro-absence.
Right. Instead of criticizing the idea, you might say, there's some really interesting angles there. Let me run some numbers in the background and see how we can support that.
So what does this all mean? Because when we start talking about managing egos, deploying micro-absences, letting people run with mediocre ideas, it's really easy for this to sound like dark, petty office politics.
Right.
Like we're just manipulating people.
It's not manipulation, though. It's high-level emotional intelligence.
How so?
Petty politics is about tearing other people down. What we're talking about is mastering your own impulses. It's about thinking 3 moves ahead. The amateur is only playing the current move. They want to be validated right now. The strategic thinker calculates the psychological ripple effect of their actions over the next 6 months.
Man, it requires a brutal amount of self-control.
Immense self-control.
You have to actively suppress your own ego's desperate desire to be patted on the back today, in exchange for building a much stronger, deeply rooted influence tomorrow.
It's the long game.
It is.
And it takes practice to rewire yourself like that. I mean, the next time you feel the urge to immediately reply to a provocative email, stop.
Just don't send it.
Wait 2 hours. Let the silence sit. The next time someone makes a passive-aggressive comment in a meeting, don't rush to defend yourself.
Which is so hard to do.
Very hard. But just look at them, hold a perfectly neutral silence for 3 seconds, and then gracefully change the subject.
And see what happens.
Watch how the dynamic shifts. Notice how the other person suddenly starts backpedaling because they can't handle the vacuum you just created.
It's literally like seeing the code of the Matrix for the first time.
It really is.
You start to recognize the invisible strings of attention that govern almost every human interaction.
You can't unsee it.
No, you really can't. So to summarize the overarching lesson we've unpacked today. True, enduring influence is absolutely not about being the loudest voice in the room.
No.
It's the exact opposite. It's about mastering the law of absence, refusing to hyperinflate your own presence, and using scarcity to drive up your perceived value.
Exactly.
It's about deploying strategic silence to build psychological weight and carefully managing the fragile egos around you by completely dictating the rhythm of the room.
But there's one final lingering question I want to leave you with, something to mull over after this finishes playing.
Let's hear it.
We've spent this entire deep dive discussing how strategic disappearance affects the people around you, how it manages their perceptions, their anxieties, and their attention.
Right.
But what happens to your own mind when you deliberately unplug from the constant feedback loop of other people's validation?
Well, that's interesting.
When you finally step out of that frantic spotlight and sit in your own strategically created silence, does it actually force you to confront who you really are when absolutely nobody is watching?
Wow, that is a very heavy thought to sit with. If you finally leave that crowded room where everyone is waving their arms, you have to look at yourself in the quiet.
You do.
Well, challenge yourself to build that silence this week. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a step back, let the void do the work, and we'll catch you next time.